Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. Why do they always cast me as a woman? Why can't I ever play Romeo? I am a serious actor, lost out of my time. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. Call me a woman and I'll show you I am a man. I am a trained Shakespearean actor in my time, but I hate Shakespeare. He can only see me as a boy, fit only to play a girl. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. I have nothing against women. I only object to women not playing my parts and leaving them all to me. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. Why do they always cast me as a woman? Why can't I ever play Romeo? I am a serious actor, lost out of my time. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. Call me a woman and I'll show you I am a man. I am a trained Shakespearean actor in my time, but I hate Shakespeare. He can only see me as a boy, fit only to play a girl. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. I have nothing against women. I only object to women not playing my parts and leaving them all to me. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. Oh, why am I always Juliet?
Why Am I Always Juliet from Rachel Lawson's The Magician series. Don't call me Juliet, a time traveller's lament. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. Why do they always cast me as a woman? Why can't I ever play Romeo? I am a serious actor lost out of my time. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. Call me a woman, and I'll show you I am a man. I am a trained Shakespearean actor in my time, but I hate Shakespeare. He can only see me as a boy, fit only to play a girl. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. I have nothing against women. I only object to women not playing my parts and leaving them all to me. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. Why do they always cast me as a woman? Why can't I ever play Romeo? I am a serious actor lost out of my time. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. Call me a woman and I'll show you I am a man. I am a trained Shakespearean actor in my time, but I hate Shakespeare. He can only see me as a boy, fit only to play a girl. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. I have nothing against women. I only object to women not playing my parts and leaving them all to me. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. Oh, why am I always Juliet? Act 1. Much Ado About Juliet. Chapter 1. cast against their will. In the age of William Shakespeare, women did not tread the stage, not even as themselves. Every Juliet, every Ophelia, every Desdemona, all played by boys and young-looking men. And that, unfortunately, is where this fiasco begins. Lucius Silver was once a serious Shakespearean actor from the year 2018, near immortal, disciplined, brilliant, and absolutely done with being cast as Juliet. But time had other plans. A twist of fate sent Lucius and his friends hurtling into the distant past, where they lived many lives, served many crowns, and caused more trouble than history ever recorded. His closest companion, Blake, weather wizard of Queen Elizabeth I, found himself in royal service, commanding storms at the Queen's whim. And one day, Her Majesty made a request neither of them could refuse. Her weatherman, Blake, and her court favourite, Lucius Silver, were to perform in a play by the most prominent playwright of her age, William Shakespeare. And so begins our story, with a time-lost actor who refuses to be Juliet, a storm summoner who refuses to be Romeo, and a playwright who refuses to listen to either of them. "Why am I playing a woman? I'm a man," Lucius complained, pacing like a caged cat. "It's an all-male cast," Blake said, far too casually. "Someone has to play Juliet. You look young, so you're a female." Lucius stopped dead. He was a serious Shakespearean actor from the future, and nothing belittled him more than being shoved into women's roles. It felt awkward, humiliating, and beneath his training. "Many actors would kill to be in your role," Blake added. "Yes, women!" Lucius snapped, insulted. Blake ignored him. "Who's playing Romeo?" "You," Shakespeare said. "Me?" Blake blinked, stunned. "Yes," Shakespeare repeated. Lucius looked delighted at Blake's shock. "I don't do romance, not with him," Blake stammered. "Me either, Lucius began. Blake shot him a glare sharp enough to cut rope. Lucius went quiet immediately, turning a little green at the thought of kissing Blake, his friend, his storm-summoning partner, and absolutely the last person he wanted to be romantic with on stage. "I'll play any character, even a non-speaking one, as long as I don't wear a dress," Lucius pleaded, hands half raised in surrender. "The Queen won't want to see her favourite playing furniture," Blake said, suddenly serious. "She got us this audition. You think she wants to watch you pretend to be a chair?" "Quite true," the playwright added, annoyingly pleased to agree with Blake. Lucius stared at Blake as if he'd just betrayed him on a battlefield. Neither of them wanted to be here. Not in this theatre, not in this century, and certainly not in Shakespeare's casting nightmare. But Lucius knew the truth. He couldn't quit, not without ending up in prison, or worse, in the Queen's personal bad books. So he swallowed his pride, his fury, and the last of his dignity. He took the role under duress. Chapter 2. Lucius Silver versus William Shakespeare. To Lucius's great embarrassment, the wardrobe mistress descended on him like a hawk. She attacked him with measuring tapes, pins, and muttered calculations, circling him with professional efficiency. Nothing truly happened, but Lucius felt violated, as if every inch of his dignity had been itemized. And then came the real humiliation. "Come out, Luke! We want to see you!" Blake called, pleading from the stage. "No," Lucius said, voice small and trembling. He refused to step into the light. He felt like a fool, a very tall, very unwilling fool, trapped in a dress. "It's all right, dear child. You are safe," Shakespeare said gently. Lucius huffed. He was no child. "Help him on stage. He needs help," the stage manager barked. 3 burly stagehands obeyed instantly. They grabbed the man in drag and hauled him forward as Lucius kicked, twisted, and protested every inch of the way. They dragged him onto the stage like a reluctant sacrificial offering. "You've seen me now. Can I leave?" Lucius snapped. "This dress is tight in all the wrong places." Blake tried not to laugh. He failed spectacularly. Lucius glared daggers at him. "Sorry, Lucy," Blake wheezed between laughs, "but you look beautiful in that dress." "Don't call me Lucy," Lucius grumbled, cheeks burning. "You are the perfect Juliet," Shakespeare said, enchanted. "You have a perfect softness." "Soft? Me? I'll show you soft," Lucius snarled, launching himself at Shakespeare. Blake stopped laughing instantly. He lunged forward and caught Lucius around the waist, dragging him back before he could throttle the playwright. "Feisty, too perfect," Shakespeare said, strolling off stage, blissfully unaware he had narrowly escaped death. "Down, boy," Blake said, tightening his grip as Lucius fought to break free. Lucius looked ready to wring Shakespeare's neck. He... Lucius stammered, shaking with fury. "Isn't worth it," Blake said in a low, hypnotic voice. "Isn't worth it," Lucius repeated automatically, glaring at Blake. He knew Blake was manipulating his mind, and worse, he knew it worked. It annoyed him more than the dress. He lost the fight. Chapter 3. The Reluctant Juliet. Blake leaned in, trying to deliver the line with something resembling sincerity. "Thus from my lips, by thine, my sin is purged." He moved closer, far too close, clearly intending to kiss Lucius. Lucius bit his lip in panic and shoved him away. "Leave me alone, deadhead," he shouted, voice cracking with outrage. Blake froze. Lucius never called him deadhead unless he was furious, or remembering the truth Blake tried to hide. Because Blake wasn't just a weather wizard. Lucius knew he was the king of the Grim Reapers in disguise, and the last thing Lucius wanted was the literal embodiment of death trying to kiss him on stage. It was, quite literally, the kiss of death to the rehearsal. Blake's failed attempt at Romeo's kiss, Lucius biting him, shouting, "Leave me alone, deadhead," brought the entire scene crashing down. The stage froze, the actors stared, the stagehands whispered. And Shakespeare? Shakespeare swooned. He collapsed backward in a dramatic heap, overcome by the raw passion he believed he had just witnessed. When he finally came to, he sat up with wild, starstruck eyes. "You are geniuses," he proclaimed, clutching his chest. "This must be in the performance. The Queen will be moved to tears." He was ready to immortalize the moment, Lucius biting Blake, Lucius nearly kissing death itself, as the emotional centerpiece of the play. Until someone quietly pointed out the obvious. The Queen would not appreciate her favourite attacking her weatherman, especially not in front of an audience, especially not with teeth. Shakespeare blinked, deflated. "Oh," he said, as if the thought had never occurred to him. Lucius stood there in his dress, humiliated. Blake rubbed his bitten lip, offended. The stagehands tried not to laugh, and the rehearsal limped on, wounded but alive, much like Blake's dignity. Chapter 4. Juliet attacks Romeo. Blake launched into the speech with all the enthusiasm of a man reading a spell he didn't understand. "She speaks, oh, speak again, bright angel, for thou art as glorious to this night, being o'er my head, as is a winged messenger of heaven, unto the white, upturned wondering eyes of mortals, that fall back to gaze on him, when he bestrides the lazy puffing clouds, and sails upon the bosom of the air." He blinked up at Lucius, utterly baffled by what he had just said. Lucius, meanwhile, slipped effortlessly into Juliet's lines. Too effortlessly, Blake thought. "O Romeo, Romeo, wherefore art thou Romeo?" Lucius said, voice rich and serious, like the trained Shakespearean actor he truly was. "Deny thy father and refuse thy name, or, if thou wilt not, be but sworn my love, and I'll no longer be a Capulet." Blake stared, amazed. "Shall I hear more, or shall I speak at this?" Lucius repeated the line, then snapped. "Shall I hear more? Or shall I speak at this? I can't take this seriously. Blake is too intense." "Me? Too intense?" Blake sputtered. "You're too serious to be Juliet. You sounded like a one-man production of Richard III, shouting out, 'A horse, my kingdom for a horse.'" "You can have your kingdom," Lucius shot back. "I'll take the horse." He knew exactly what Blake's kingdom was, hell itself. Blake laughed. "I'd rather have my kingdom than be in your shoes." Shakespeare watched them with wide, delighted eyes, looking as if he wanted popcorn. He didn't understand a word of their banter, but he adored the energy. "Me too, I hate these shoes," Lucius moaned, stomping one foot for emphasis. Then he froze. Blake frowned. "What's wrong?" "It broke," Lucius said, voice small. "What broke?" "My shoe," Lucius whispered, horrified. The wardrobe mistress inhaled sharply, the kind of huff that promised someone was about to die. Chapter 5. In the Wings. As Blake stood backstage in the wings, watching the rehearsal unfold, a wash of nerves crept over him. It wasn't stage fright. He had trod the boards for most of his long life. He'd been a professional stage illusionist, an occasional fill-in for Lucius in future productions, and even a royal jester for a king long ago. No, it wasn't the stage that unnerved him. It was Lucius, more specifically, Lucius's attempts on their employer, William Shakespeare. Blake had taken it upon himself to act as Shakespeare's protector. He knew Lucius was as dangerous as he was proud, a trained Shakespearean actor who had played all the great roles: Hamlet, Romeo, King Lear, Richard III, Othello. To Lucius, women's roles were for women, not men. Being cast as Juliet was an insult to his manhood and his craft. And Lucius had already tried to kill Shakespeare twice, both times in fits of pique. Both times Blake had intervened. Both times Blake had saved two fools, Shakespeare and Lucius, who would hang if he succeeded. Blake knew Lucius resented him for it, resented him for getting the good part, resented him for acting as guardian reaper to the playwright. Still, Blake found himself enjoying the rehearsal. Even if he didn't like Shakespeare, he thought Lucius was performing well. Furious, humiliated, but undeniably brilliant. But his nerves grew and grew, because he knew the next scene was dangerous. He watched as Shakespeare, playing the old friar, handed Lucius the sleeping draught. Blake's stomach tightened. Lucius's temper was unpredictable, and the friar scene had always been one of his triggers. It was nearly Blake's time to go on stage. Moments later, his cue came. He stepped out, said his lines, and played his part, lying still, playing dead. And all the while he listened for the sound of Lucius losing control. Chapter 6. Oh, happy dagger. As Blake lay backstage in the wings, listening to Lucius reciting his lines, he felt the soft brush of Lucius's dress sweep across him. Then came the heat of Lucius's breath on his face, far too close, as Lucius leaned in to deliver his next line. Blake kept still, playing dead, but his nerves spiked. Then he felt it, a faint feather-light touch against his lips. Lucius's lips. Or so Blake thought. He panicked, squeezing his eyes shut, refusing to react. He had survived centuries of danger, but nothing terrified him quite like Lucius accidentally kissing him on stage. Before Blake could recover, the sound of guards approaching echoed through the theatre. Lucius reached down and pulled the dagger from the scabbard Blake wore, a prop, but still sharp enough to be dangerous in Lucius's hands. "Oh, happy dagger, this is thy sheath, there rust, and let me die," Lucius said, voice rich and tragic. "Good work, boy," Shakespeare said, still dressed as Friar Lawrence, shuffling toward Lucius for the final part of the scene. "Boy?" Lucius snapped, losing his cool and his character. Blake's eyes flew open. He saw Lucius still holding the dagger, still standing, still advancing toward the friar. "Quit it, Argent. Drop the knife," Blake hissed, using Lucius's true name, the name only a reaper would know. Lucius froze. "Mortimer," Argent hissed back, like a snake, glaring at Blake with supernatural fury. He used Blake's true name, the name of the king of the Grim Reapers. Blake glared right back. Shakespeare, meanwhile, was utterly oblivious. He was impressed by the pair of them, their intensity, their passion, their commitment to the scene, and completely unaware he had just been rescued from a third murder attempt. Chapter 7. "Argent, we need to talk." Blake didn't wait for the curtain to fall. The moment Shakespeare turned his back, Blake seized Lucius by the wrist and hauled him off stage, through the wings, and into the dim backstage corridor. Lucius stumbled after him, still clutching the skirt of his dress, still fuming, still very much Juliet with murder in her eyes. "Let go of me," Lucius snapped, yanking his arm free. "I was acting." "You were about to stab Shakespeare," Blake said flatly. Lucius opened his mouth, then closed it again. He looked away, jaw tight. Blake folded his arms. "Argent, we need to talk." Lucius flinched at the name. His true name, the one he never used, the one Blake only pulled out when things were serious. "Don't call me that," Lucius muttered. "I'll stop calling you Argent when you stop trying to kill the playwright," Blake said. "That's the third time. Third. I'm keeping count." Lucius paced, dress swishing angrily. "He called me boy. Again. I am not a boy. I am not Juliet. I am not—" "You are going to get yourself executed," Blake cut in. "And I am not dragging your ghost out of the gallows. I have enough ghosts to deal with." Lucius stopped pacing. He looked at Blake, really looked at him, and for a moment the fury cracked, revealing something raw underneath. "I hate this," Lucius said quietly. "I hate the dress. I hate the role. I hate being laughed at. I hate being small." Blake's expression softened. Just a little. "You're not small," Blake said. "You're Lucius Silver. You've played kings. You've played gods. You've played Hamlet better than anyone in your century." Lucius swallowed hard. "But right now," Blake continued, "you're Juliet. And if you kill Shakespeare, you'll never play anything again." Lucius sighed, shoulders slumping. "I wasn't going to kill him." "You were absolutely going to kill him." Lucius didn't argue. Blake stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Look, I get it. I don't want to be Romeo either. I don't do romance. I don't do kissing. I don't do whatever that was you did to my lips." Lucius went scarlet. "I panicked." "I noticed." They stood there in the dim backstage corridor, two immortals trapped in a Shakespearean disaster, breathing hard, glaring, exhausted. Finally, Blake said, "Just try not to stab anyone for the rest of rehearsal." Lucius huffed. "Fine. And stop calling me Deadhead." Lucius smirked. "Then stop calling me boy." Blake rolled his eyes. "Deal." They walked back toward the stage, Blake tense, Lucius sulking, and Shakespeare, blissfully unaware, was already preparing the next scene. Chapter 8. Blake loses control. When Blake and Lucius rejoined the cast, they were forced to rehearse the balcony scene again, the one that had already broken a shoe, a stagehand's patience, and Blake's dignity. Blake stepped into position beneath the balcony, nerves prickling. He could feel the storm inside him building, the way it always did when he was stressed, and nothing stressed him more than romance. As he reached up toward Juliet, toward Lucius, a sharp arc of blue electricity snapped from his fingers. Lucius flinched, the stagehands flinched, even Shakespeare flinched. Then the gale hit. A sudden burst of wind roared through the theatre, knocking props over and sending scripts flying. Lucius's dress whipped around him like a flag in a hurricane. "Blake!" Lucius shouted, clinging to the balcony rail. "Control your storms!" But Blake couldn't. He didn't do romance. He didn't do weather. He barely did breathing at this point. The gale surged again, and Lucius lost his grip. He toppled from the balcony with a scream, but instead of crashing to the stage, Lucius floated, drifting downward in a shimmering silver glow, landing with the elegance of a celestial being. The audience of actors gasped. Shakespeare cheered, applauding wildly. "Brilliant, inspired, a divine descent," he cried, convinced Blake had orchestrated the entire spectacle. Blake stared, horrified. "I didn't do that." Lucius rounded on him, furious. "Of course you didn't. That was me trying not to die." They stood nose to nose, arguing while the silver glow faded. Blake threw up his hands. "You looked like Tinker Bell." Lucius's eyes narrowed to slits. "And you looked like Mort the Great losing control of his wind." Blake bristled at the use of his true name, Mortimer, king of the Grim Reapers, but Shakespeare was too busy applauding to notice the supernatural bickering. "Again!" Shakespeare shouted. "Do it again. The Queen will adore it." Lucius groaned. Blake sighed. The stagehands prayed, and the rehearsal descended into chaos once more. Chapter 9. Romeo hates Juliet. The rumours began quickly. Romeo and Juliet were witches, or warlocks, as some whispered more cautiously. No one even suspected the truth. Blake was death. Lucius was fate. Blake, the Queen's weatherman, was a powerful necromancer and enchanter. Lucius, the court favourite, was an enchanter who ruled fate itself and death in all its forms. Yet for all his cosmic authority, Lucius had no control over casting. So he was stuck as Juliet. The cast grew nervous around them. Actors who had once mocked Lucius's dress now kept their distance, bowing slightly as they passed, terrified of being cursed. Stagehands whispered prayers when Blake walked by, hoping he wouldn't summon lightning indoors. Blake and Lucius found it all ridiculous. They didn't curse people. It was rude. But the rumour mill spun on. Another rumour claimed Romeo and Juliet hated each other. This one spread faster than the witch story, mostly because it was true. People began asking them directly, "Do you two hate each other?" Lucius didn't hesitate. "Yes," Blake added. "I don't do romance and I don't like him." "Why?" someone asked. Blake sighed. "How would you feel if you had to kiss your friend?" Most of the cast nodded in sympathy. They agreed it was a fair point, and reassured that Romeo and Juliet were merely irritated and not cursed, they relaxed, slightly. But the rumours didn't stop. They simply evolved. Act 2. Rehearsals of Anarchy. Chapter 10. The Go-Between. The actor playing Mercutio pitied them. He truly did. Romeo and Juliet, Blake and Lucius, were the most chaotic pair he had ever worked with. He had seen actors fight, argue, storm off, cry, and threaten to quit, but never two performers who seemed one rehearsal away from murder. So he tried to mend things. He regretted it immediately. He realized he would have better luck trying to make Lucius like Shakespeare, and Lucius tried to kill Shakespeare all the time. Still, he approached them during rehearsal. "Romeo, Juliet, why are you always fighting? Why do you hate each other so?" Mercutio asked gently. Lucius stiffened at the name Juliet. Blake didn't react at all. "We have a long history," Blake said. "Yes, and most of it we can't talk of here," Lucius added darkly. "My grievance list could make a play," Blake said. "That long," Mercutio murmured sadly. "Mine too," Lucius said. "Mine would be longer," Blake grumbled. "I think you're wrong," Lucius snapped, frowning. Mercutio saw the argument forming like a storm cloud and panicked. "Oh," "Look, here comes Will," he blurted, spotting Shakespeare approaching. Lucius's glare turned instantly hateful. Blake watched him with concern. Shakespeare strode up, beaming. "I have decided to rewrite the play." "What play?" Blake asked. "This play," Shakespeare declared proudly. "Why?" Blake asked. "How?" Lucius demanded, horrified at the idea of relearning his favourite play. "Romeo floats up to Juliet on the balcony in a silver light," Shakespeare said, eyes shining. "I can't. That silver light was him," Blake moaned, pointing at Lucius. "His magic is blue lightning," Lucius said flatly. "Oh, that won't look as good." "Never mind," Shakespeare mumbled, instantly deflated. He wandered off, depressed. Lucius sighed in relief. He had dodged a bullet. He didn't have to learn a new script. Mercutio decided never to meddle again. Chapter 11. The Lovers' Quarrel. In yet another rehearsal for the death scene, Lucius was in an unusually romantic mood, which for him meant dangerous. Instead of bending down to kiss the dead Romeo, he kicked him squarely in the ribs. Blake screamed in pain, eyes flying open. "That's like you kicking a man when he's down," he wheezed. "Why did you kick Romeo, Juliet?" Shakespeare demanded, scandalized. "He knows," Lucius snapped. "Not in front of the humans, Argent," Blake moaned, clutching his side. "You can kick me as much as you want when I'm really dead, but not here." "Humans?" Shakespeare echoed, confused. "I'm not going there. I plead the 5th, Blake blurted. "This is the 18th of December, Shakespeare said, baffled. "Oh, never mind. No Bill of Independence yet," Blake muttered. "Bill of what?" Shakespeare asked. "We had a differing of opinions at work," Blake said, now on his feet and glaring at Lucius, who stood equally tall, equally furious, and unfortunately still in a dress. "It must have been serious," Shakespeare said. "Only a matter of life and death." "Nothing serious," Blake replied. "I have to talk to you about it now," Lucius said, voice low and dangerous. Blake hissed back. "See you in the afterlife if you're so insistent to see me, Juliet. We can talk there. No one would understand us here." They wouldn't. It was about a soul Blake had taken, one Lucius wanted to put back, but the human had died. Blake judged them and sent them for processing in the afterlife, ignoring fate's airy-fairy decree. The afterlife was run like a business by Blake. The humans didn't need to know that. Shakespeare suddenly turned and ran. "Where are you going, Will?" Blake called. "I'm going to my writing desk," Shakespeare shouted. "Why?" "I've got to take down what you just said. It's going in the play," he cried as he vanished down the corridor. Blake stood there scratching his head, wondering what on earth he had said that Shakespeare found so inspiring. Lucius kicked him again. Chapter 12. Shakespeare's disastrous rewrite. The cast sat at attention, pretending to look interested as Shakespeare proudly read his newly rewritten death scene for Romeo and Juliet. No one liked it. Something felt off. It was perfect. Too perfect. It didn't sound like Shakespeare at all. It sounded like modern English. Even Blake understood every word. Shakespeare beamed. I was inspired by Blake. He said something profound. He cleared his throat and recited, "See you in the afterlife, Juliet. No one understands us here." Blake went rigid. Lucius went pale. Shakespeare continued. He paraphrased something Blake said to Lucius. "See you in the afterlife if you're so insistent to see me, Juliet. We can talk there. No one would understand us here." Blake's nerves spiked. A storm cracked open above the globe's uncovered yard. Thunder boomed. Rain poured down on the cast and crew. Everyone glared at Blake, then scrambled for the covered stage. "Blake, can you stop the storm?" Shakespeare asked. Blake tried. He failed. "I don't do weather," Blake said miserably. "You can't," Lucius added. Blake grimaced. "I'll help you," Lucius said. He cast a silent spell. The rain stopped. The storm died. "Thank you," Shakespeare said. Lucius smiled proudly. A soft, cooling breeze drifted through the theatre, barely noticeable at first. Blake felt it. He frowned. The breeze thickened, swirled, gathered. A dust devil formed, a tiny cyclone spinning in the centre of the yard. Blake ignored it. It grew larger. "Oh, great! You made a cyclone," Blake cried, glaring at Lucius. Chairs flew into the air, one smashed into Blake and shattered on impact. "Can one of you stop that?" Shakespeare shouted. Blake sighed, waved his arm, and the cyclone vanished. Everything suspended in the air dropped at once. "Thank you, Blake," Shakespeare said. "You're welcome, Will," Blake replied. Lucius looked sheepish. He had caused more trouble trying to help. Shakespeare realised it was not right for the play when, after a day or two's sleep, and went back to the old script. It felt more him. Chapter 13. The Art of War. The theatre had finally been repaired, and rehearsals resumed. Lucius stood silently near the stage, idly twirling the dagger in elegant dramatic flourishes as Shakespeare addressed the troupe. Blake watched him with deep disapproval. "Argent, stop threatening the playwright," Blake's voice echoed in Lucius's mind. Lucius frowned. Telepathy. Blake was scolding him without even moving his lips. "He deserves it," Lucius replied silently. "For hurting your pride, that's shallow even for you," Blake shot back. "Maybe I can dream, can't I?" Lucius said. "Make sure it stays a dream. I'd hate to have to process you. They hang killers here," Blake warned. "Like witches, usually. I understand," Lucius replied. "As long as you realize it's a dangerous game you're playing, threatening a popular man," Blake said. Lucius smiled faintly. "He's my hero." Blake blinked. "Then why are you trying to kill him?" "Clash of personalities." Blake chuckled silently. "Is that what it's called these days? As long as that's the only thing clashing, Argent." Shakespeare, noticing their distant expressions, clapped his hands sharply. "Lucius, Blake, are you listening to me? You look distracted." He pointed at Lucius. "Lucy, give Blake the dagger. You're a big boy. You know playing with knives is dangerous." Blake heard the explosion of fury in Lucius's mind. "Lucy, boy, why are you—" But Lucius obeyed. He handed the dagger to Blake, who slid it into his scabbard. Lucius's eyes flicked toward Shakespeare's heart, just for a moment. Blake saw it, Blake felt it, and Blake was concerned. Chapter 14. Romeo and Juliet refused to kiss. As Romeo lay dead on the stage, Juliet stood frozen. Lucius knew exactly what everyone wanted him to do, kiss Blake, and the thought mortified him. "Come on, boy, kiss him. You've done it before," Shakespeare urged. "I can't," Lucius whispered. "You can, and must," Shakespeare said firmly. I can't," Lucius stammered, panic rising. "Romeo, stand up," Shakespeare ordered. Blake stood, unsure why. "Kiss him, Lucy," Shakespeare said. "I can't," Lucius repeated. "Blake, kiss him," Shakespeare said. "No," Blake replied immediately. He didn't enjoy kissing Lucius either. Shakespeare marched up to them, exasperated. "You are going to have to get used to it," he said. "I don't even like him," Lucius said. "Me neither. I'm married, and I'm in love with my wife," Blake added. "That's nice," Shakespeare said, waving it off. "But you don't have to like each other. You just have to look like you like each other." "No, Will. Change the script." "I won't do it," Lucius said. Shakespeare did what he felt needed to be done. He grabbed both their heads and tried to force them together. "This is manhandling," Blake yelped, seeing Lucius's face coming toward his. "You can't do this. I'll speak to the Actors' Union," Lucius shouted. "There is no Actors' Union here, Argent," Blake said. "I'll kill you myself if you—" Lucius began. But the threat cut off as Shakespeare forced their faces together. They kissed, both panicked. Shakespeare released them only once their lips met. "How dare you!" Lucius shouted, slapping Shakespeare across the face with all the fury of a humiliated immortal in a dress. Blake was livid too, but kept a cool head, mostly because he feared Lucius might carry out his threat. "Let's call it a night, boys," Shakespeare said, nursing his rapidly swelling cheek. He dismissed rehearsal, muttering that he probably deserved it. When he got home, he put a slab of bloodstake on his face. He would have a spectacular bruise by morning. Chapter 15. A matter of opinion. The next rehearsal was tense. Romeo and Juliet arrived angry and scared, Blake still shaken from the forced kiss, Lucius still humiliated and furious. Shakespeare arrived with a spectacular bruise blooming across his cheek. The cast and crew were already gathered, complaining loudly. "They're acting like amateurs," one actor snapped. "We should recast the roles," another muttered. "They're ruining the play," someone whispered. Shakespeare clapped his hands, beaming. "New blood," he declared. "Fresh blood. You two are refreshing the cast." The troupe stared at him, horrified. Some whispered that he must be under their spell. Lucius thought he was as deranged as the people calling him an amateur. He was a trained Shakespearean actor. They were the amateurs. Blake, meanwhile, watched Lucius carefully. After last night's disaster, he wasn't sure what Lucius might do. He might slap Shakespeare again. He might stab him. He might do something worse. Shakespeare continued, oblivious. "You are visionaries," he said proudly, "revolutionaries of the stage." The cast groaned. Lucius rolled his eyes. Blake sighed, and rehearsal began, with everyone on edge. Chapter 16. The Lovers' Bond. It was long past twilight, and romance haunted the minds of Romeo and Juliet. Not real romance, the forced kind, the scripted kind, the kind that made both men's nerves fray like worn thread. Their emotions were raw, their nerves torn over the looming love scenes. The dreaded kiss hung over them like a storm cloud. They would have felt less fear kissing a woman, but they were friends, and both men, and neither was the other's type. They knew it was an all-male cast. They knew they couldn't refuse, and they knew they couldn't quit. Queen Elizabeth I would never allow it. She wanted to see them perform with Shakespeare's troupe, and her will was law. So the two immortals, fate and death, sat together in the dimness, confiding in each other like frightened apprentices instead of cosmic beings. They spoke quietly, honestly. Neither mocked the other, neither said anything sharp or cruel, neither added to the other's stress. They soothed each other's nerves, they steadied each other's minds. They were there for each other. Two friends linked in grief, bonded by shared dread. Friends finding comfort in pain. Friends holding each other together because no one else could understand. Chapter 17. The Greatest Amateur Actor. The scene Lucius dreaded began. He knelt, heart pounding, fear twisting inside him. He kissed Blake with surprising passion, not because he wanted to, but because he was a professional. His voice followed with equal intensity, trembling with real tears. Then he drew the dagger from Blake's scabbard and began his "Oh, happy dagger" monologue. Lucius transformed. Every line was alive, every gesture precise, every tear real. He impressed everyone, even Blake, who had always been a quiet admirer of Lucius's acting. In that moment, Lucius was the most professional actor on any stage in those days, and he proved it. He was no amateur. Blake cracked one eye open, watching him. Lucius's death was astonishing, tragic, beautiful, utterly convincing. The cast applauded, the crew applauded, even the stagehands applauded. Blake simply closed his eye again, trying not to smile. Shakespeare, dressed as Friar Lawrence, walked onto the stage and helped Lucius up. "I told you he was good," Shakespeare said proudly. Lucius smiled, a small, satisfied smile. Blake stood too, looking quietly proud of his friend, doing his best to hide it. Lucius pretended not to notice, and just like that, the calls for his sacking stopped. Chapter 18. The Accidental Romance. Inspired by Lucius, the former stage illusionist, the future fill-in actor who had once covered for him, Blake delivered his line with a sincerity no one expected. His voice was rich, steady, and full of genuine feeling. Then he kissed Juliet. He kissed Lucius with such conviction that for a heartbeat, Lucius forgot he was a man. His heart skipped. For one impossible moment, he fell in love with Blake, or at least with the illusion Blake created. It was a real kiss, until Lucius remembered who he was, what he was, and who Blake was. He was kissing death. Lucius froze, breath caught, lips burning with embarrassment. Shakespeare screamed with joy, praising them both, clapping like a delighted child. Blake pulled back, equally awkward, equally startled. Lucy, are you all right?" Blake asked quietly. "Yes," Lucius said, though his voice betrayed him. The wardrobe mistress stared at Blake, utterly smitten. "You two were amazing," Shakespeare said. "You do romance well." "I don't do romance," Blake said, feeling deeply uncomfortable, as though he had accidentally seduced his friend. "Then stop doing that," Lucius muttered, still flustered. Shakespeare, oblivious, was impressed with both of them. He believed Lucius was simply acting along with Blake's passion, exactly what he wanted the audience to think. Lucius knew better, Blake knew better, and neither wanted to talk about it. Chapter 19. The Dead Scene. Later in the same rehearsal, the magic was gone. Lucius and Blake were still shaken from the kiss, too shaken, and neither dared act properly. Blake was terrified of encouraging Lucius again, and Lucius was mortified by how he had looked in love with Blake for that one impossible moment. Blake avoided Lucius's face entirely. He recited his lines stiffly, like a block of wood, not an actor, not Romeo, just a man trying not to feel anything. His grief for Juliet sounded hollow, mechanical. When he died, he simply lay down and closed his eyes, eager for the scene to end. The cast stared. They could hardly believe this was the same man who had stolen their hearts earlier. Lucius rose far too quickly, so quickly it wasn't realistic. He mumbled his lines, ashamed of every word, barely glancing at Blake. When he reached the kiss, he only pecked Blake's cheek, eyes darting away as if afraid of what might happen if he lingered. He mumbled more, picked up Blake's dagger, and died slowly, not dramatically, not passionately, just dutifully. Shakespeare was ecstatic. He clapped his hands, eyes shining. "I've seen nothing like it before. Revolutionary." The rest of the cast and crew exchanged looks. They thought he had flipped his lid. Even Lucius and Blake thought so. Act 3. The play goes off the rails. Chapter 20. Pre-show panic. It was the night of the show's opening, and everyone was nervous. Lucius was threatening to leave again, pacing in his Juliet dress like a furious ghost. He felt a fool playing a woman in a romance, and tonight the humiliation felt sharper than ever. Blake sat in a corner, rereading the script for the 100th time, terrified he might faint on stage. Shakespeare, meanwhile, was threatening to rewrite the ending again. The cast protested loudly. It was far too late for rewrites, so he reluctantly abandoned the idea. Lucius wasn't reading the script, he was reading the program. "Blake, I can't believe it," Lucius said. "What?" Blake asked, eyes still glued to the script. "The program calls me Lucy Silver," Lucius said, horrified. "Nice," Blake murmured, barely listening. "Nice? Nice? Women aren't allowed on stage," Lucius moaned. "You're a man," Blake said, still reading. "The watch may get confused," Lucius insisted. Blake finally looked up. "You look like a tall man in a dress," No one could mistake you for a woman. Good, I think, Lucius said, unsure whether that was comforting or insulting. Blake returned to the script. Lucius's thoughts spiraled. He imagined the audience laughing at them, laughing at the kiss, laughing at him. He was mortified. Blake winced. Lucius's thoughts were loud in his head. Can you think a little more quietly? I'm trying to memorize the script, Blake groaned. I can't, Lucius said helplessly. Blake tried to ignore him, but Lucius's anxiety was too loud. He set the script down with a sigh. They're used to seeing men play women, Blake said finally. They'll think nothing of it. Lucius wasn't so sure. Chapter 21. The scene was electric. The play began smoothly. Lines flowed, cues landed, and the audience settled into the familiar rhythm of Shakespeare's tragedy. Until the balcony scene. Blake stepped forward, looking up at Lucius on the balcony. He reached out with a passion that was apparently too much. But soft, what light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Lightning arced from his hand. It shot upward, striking Juliet, Lucius, who glowered down at him, nearly losing his balance and tumbling off the balcony. Other than that, Lucius was fine. But he wondered, not for the first time, how Blake's wife survived his emotional outbursts. Blake grimaced. The audience went silent, unsure whether this was part of the show or divine intervention. Angela, Blake's wife, sat frozen in the crowd, looking deeply nervous for her husband. Queen Elizabeth I laughed heartily. The audience, seeing the Queen laugh, followed her lead. Angela sighed. Blake calmed himself and the lightning died. The show continued, smoother now, though everyone on stage was braced for the next magical mishap. Chapter 22. Juliet takes the lead. The ball scene began beautifully, music, colour, movement, until Lucius forgot he was supposed to be a woman. As Blake stepped forward to lead the dance, Lucius instinctively tried to take the lead himself. He guided Blake's hand, shifted Blake's arm, and moved with the confident precision of a trained male dancer. Blake stumbled, then he tripped, then he fell. He glared up at Lucius, mortified. Lucius froze, equally mortified. Blake stood, dusted himself off, and, with visible irritation, switched roles, dancing the female part with stiff, reluctant grace. Shakespeare watched from the wings, horrified. They've ruined my play, he whispered, eyes filling with tears. But the audience, and Queen Elizabeth, erupted with laughter. They laughed so loudly Blake and Lucius could barely be heard over it. The Queen clapped her hands, delighted. The crowd followed her lead, roaring with amusement. Shakespeare wasn't sure whether it was a good thing or a catastrophe. Lucius wasn't sure either. Blake definitely wasn't. But the audience loved it. Chapter 23. No kissing, please. Lucius and Blake were terrified. The scene they dreaded most, the kiss, was moments away. Every other kissing scene had traumatized them, and now they had to do it in front of a full house, the Queen, and Shakespeare himself. The play had gone smoothly so far, but now they stood on stage, trapped in the moment everyone expected. Romeo stepped forward, voice soft, reverent, trembling with the weight of the moment. Good pilgrim, you do wrong your hand too much. Lucius, Juliet, answered, trying to keep his voice steady. For saints have hands that pilgrims' hands do touch. The audience leaned in. Shakespeare leaned in. The Queen leaned in. This was it, the kiss, the famous kiss. Blake swallowed hard. Lucius froze. Their eyes met. Both equally terrified. Blake's hand twitched. Lucius's lip twitched. And then Blake extended his hand, straight out, formal, like he was greeting a foreign ambassador. Lucius stared at it. The audience murmured. Lucius, desperate, grabbed Blake's hand and shook it with solemn dignity as though sealing a treaty between kingdoms. They shook once, twice, 3 times, too long, far too long. Blake nodded gravely, as if this were the most natural interpretation of Shakespeare ever staged. Lucius nodded back, equally grave, equally mortified. The Queen burst out laughing. The audience followed her lead, roaring with delight. Shakespeare died inside. He staggered backstage, clutching his chest, whispering, "My sonnet, my kiss, ruined." But the crowd adored it. Lucius released Blake's hand as though it were burning. Blake wiped his palm on his doublet. Lucius tried to look dignified. Blake tried not to faint. And the scene continued, the most infamous non-kiss in theatre history. Chapter 24. Titania at the altar. Later, in the wedding scene, the chapel set glowed under candlelight. Blake and Lucius stepped forward, both trembling. Blake from nerves, Lucius from sheer dread of being Juliet in a wedding dress. Shakespeare, dressed as Friar Lawrence, lifted his hands solemnly. "Come, come with me, and we will make short work." Blake's fingers sparked. A tiny arc of lightning snapped between his hands. Lucius flinched. "Blake, not now!" "I'm trying," Blake hissed. Another spark jumped. Lucius glared. "You're glowing again, like Oberon summoning a storm." Blake stiffened. "I am not Oberon." Lucius waved dismissively. "Fine, Titania then." Silence. Blake froze. Shakespeare froze. The audience leaned forward. Blake's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "Titania?" Lucius's eyes widened. I meant Oberon, the king of fairies." Shakespeare's face twisted. "Wrong play," he muttered under his breath. "Wrong play entirely." Blake's eyebrow twitched. "You called me the fairy queen." "I panicked," Lucius hissed. "You're sparkling." "I do not sparkle." "You do. You're practically glowing like a midsummer lantern." A larger spark snapped from Blake's fingertips. The Queen laughed. The audience followed her lead. Shakespeare pressed a hand to his forehead. "I swear by all the saints, this is not a Midsummer Night's Dream." Lucius pointed at Blake's shimmering hands. "See? Titania." Blake groaned. "I hate you." Lucius patted his arm. "Look, at least you're a powerful fairy queen." Shakespeare cleared his throat loudly, trying to salvage the scene. "If the heavens do smile upon this holy act," he began, voice cracking. Another spark jumped. Lucius backed away. "Blake, please don't arc during the vows." Blake muttered, "I'll try." Shakespeare sighed, defeated. "This marriage may be the death of me." The Queen laughed again. The audience roared, and the most chaotic wedding scene in theatre history continued. Chapter 25. Kissing Death. Lucius knew this was it. He and Blake had to kiss. It was the end of the show, the death scene. They couldn't get around it, not this time. He looked pale, wide-eyed, and genuinely traumatized, which was unfortunate, because the scene required him to look dead, not terrified. Blake, meanwhile, was convinced Lucius had lost his mind. "He's supposed to be dead," Blake muttered under his breath as he stepped onto the stage. "Not hysterical." Lucius lay on the bier, stiff as a plank, eyes squeezed shut, hands clenched, breathing so shallow he looked like he was trying not to exist. Blake approached him slowly as Romeo. He wasn't grieving. He wasn't heartbroken. He wasn't tragic. He looked like a man approaching a haunted corpse. The audience leaned in. The Queen leaned in. Shakespeare leaned in, praying for one normal moment. Blake knelt beside Lucius, voice trembling, not with emotion, but with fear. "Oh, my love, my wife," he whispered, sounding like he expected Lucius to sit up and bite him. Lucius didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. He looked too dead. Blake swallowed hard. He leaned closer. Lucius twitched. Blake jerked back. The audience laughed. Shakespeare died inside. Blake forced himself forward again, hands shaking. He looked down at Lucius with the expression of a man about to kiss a corpse that might suddenly come alive and scream. He whispered, "Lucius, please stop looking like you're about to jump up." Lucius whispered back, "I can't." Blake sighed, resigned himself to fate, and leaned in for the kiss. It was supposed to be tender, tragic, romantic. Instead, Blake kissed Lucius like he was kissing a corpse he was terrified of. Stiff, hesitant, lips barely touching, eyes half open in case Lucius moved. The audience erupted with laughter. Queen Elizabeth clapped her hands, delighted. Shakespeare staggered backstage, clutching his chest. "My tragedy, my tragedy." Lucius opened his eyes, mortified. Blake pulled back, equally mortified. They stared at each other, two immortals who had just performed the least romantic death scene kiss in theatre history. And the scene continued. Chapter 26. Juliet takes a bow. The laughter from the corpse kiss was still echoing through the theatre when Blake staggered to his feet, trying to salvage the final moments of the tragedy. Lucius lay frozen on the bier, mortified, wishing he could sink through the floorboards and never return. Shakespeare, backstage, was whispering prayers to every saint he could name. The Queen dabbed tears of laughter from her eyes. Blake extended a trembling hand toward Lucius, not for a kiss this time, thank heaven, but to help Juliet's body be lifted for the final tableau. Lucius panicked. He sat up too fast. The audience laughed again. Blake hissed, "Lucius, you're supposed to be dead." Lucius whispered back, "I forgot." Shakespeare clutched his chest. Lucius scrambled off the bier, trying to regain some shred of dignity. He remembered, vaguely, that Juliet was supposed to be graceful, feminine, tragic. He remembered, vaguely, that women curtsied. He remembered, vaguely, that he was wearing a dress, but panic overrode everything. Lucius stepped forward, gathered the skirt in both fists, like he was about to duel someone, and he bowed. A full, stiff, masculine bow, straight back, straight legs, formal, knight to monarch, in Juliet's wedding gown. The audience exploded. The Queen laughed so loudly her ladies jumped. Blake covered his face. Shakespeare whispered, "Juliet does not bow. Juliet does not bow." Lucius, still bent at a perfect 90-degree angle, whispered through clenched teeth, "I panicked." Blake whispered back, "You think?" Lucius straightened, mortified, trying to pretend the bow had been intentional. The audience adored it. Shakespeare aged 10 years, and the most chaotic ending in theatre history continued. Act 4. The cycle continues. Chapter 27. Fallout. Later, in the green room of the Globe Theatre, Blake and Lucius stood sheepishly, relieved the show was finally over. Relieved, but terrified. They knew they had ruined the performance. They knew the rest of the cast was furious. And Shakespeare looked ready to explode. "Lucy, Blake, why did you not follow the script?" he demanded, disappointment dripping from every syllable. Lucius looked nervously at Blake. "Sorry," Blake said, voice small. "Sorry is not enough," Shakespeare snapped. "You made us look bad in front of the Queen." "I'm sorry, Will. All of you. Lucius swallowed, guilt twisting in his stomach. He'd rather kiss Blake again than stand here being scolded. Shakespeare planted his hands on his hips, frowning at them, waiting for a real explanation. Before either could speak, the door opened. Shakespeare turned and froze. A woman stepped inside, a woman he didn't recognize, a woman who definitely didn't work there. "Master Shakespeare," she said. Shakespeare tried to smile. It looked painful. Come in, come in." He was terrified. Blake and Lucius looked ashamed, bracing for the worst. "I'm sorry about the performance," Shakespeare said quickly, nervously. "The show was amazing," the woman said. "Amazing?" Shakespeare echoed, stunned. "I have never laughed so much in my life," she said warmly. "I had to tell you myself. It was the best show of yours I've ever seen. Sir Blake and Sir Lucius were the best part." Lucius brightened instantly. Shakespeare blinked. "Thank you, Your Majesty," he said, bowing. "Sir Lucius, Sir Blake, they were a credit to—" Blake looked confused. Shakespeare had looked ready to sack them moments ago. "Thank you," said Sir Lucius Silver, smiling, cutting Shakespeare off before he could lie any further. "You're welcome, Sir Lucius," Queen Bess said, smiling back. "They are our best comedians," Shakespeare said, trying to sound proud instead of panicked. "Yes," said the Queen. "I was right to order this command performance with them. They were very entertaining. I will leave you to your men." She swept out of the room. Shakespeare stared at Blake and Lucius. They gulped. "You were lucky," Shakespeare said darkly. Chapter 28. Juliet does not bow. Blake's office in the afterlife was small, dark and dingy, a cramped wooden room lit by 3 uneven candles that dripped wax onto the desk. The air smelled faintly of old parchment and something colder, something like grave dust. Lucius stood in the doorway, shivering. Blake was already inside, in reaper form, tall, hooded, shadowed. His skeletal hands rested on a desk buried under glowing paperwork. In the corner sat the cupboard Blake used to store his body when he was dead. It creaked ominously. Lucius tried not to look at it. Blake gestured stiffly. "Sit." Lucius sat on the rickety chair, which groaned under him like it disapproved. Blake's hollow voice echoed softly. "You bowed." Lucius winced. "I panicked." "You bowed," Blake repeated, as if the memory physically hurt him. Lucius nodded miserably. "I know." "In a wedding dress." "I know." "While dead." Lucius groaned. "I know." A candle sputtered, throwing a long shadow across Blake's skull-like face. Blake leaned back, bony fingers steepled. "Lucius, you looked like a corpse having a nervous breakdown." Lucius whispered, "I was having a nervous breakdown." Blake paused. "Fair." A sheet of parchment on the desk glowed and began writing itself. Incident report, emotional collapse during death scene. Lucius pointed at it. "Tell it to stop." Blake snapped his fingers. The parchment froze. Silence settled, thick, heavy, coffin-like. Lucius swallowed. "Blake, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ruin everything." Blake's skull tilted, softening in a way only Lucius could read. "You didn't ruin everything." Lucius looked up hopefully. Blake added, "You ruined most things." Lucius dropped his head onto the desk with a thud that made dust fall from the ceiling. Blake sighed, candlelight flickering across his hollow eye sockets. "Lucius." The Queen loved it. Lucius lifted his head. "She did?" "She said we were her best comedians." Lucius blinked. "Comedians?" Blake nodded. "Apparently Romeo and Juliet is now a comedy." Lucius groaned. "Shakespeare is going to kill us." Blake gestured at his own skeletal form. He already tried. Lucius snorted, a tiny laugh escaping. Blake leaned forward, voice gentler despite the echo. "Look, you were terrified. I get it." Lucius whispered, "I thought I'd faint, or scream, or die." "You look like you did all 3. Lucius laughed again. A real one this time. Blake's skull tilted in a smile. But you got through it. Lucius sighed. Barely. Barely counts. Lucius stood, brushing candle soot off his sleeve. So, we're not fired? Blake shook his hooded head. No. We're promoted. Lucius blinked. Promoted? Blake sighed. We're officially the Queen's favourite performers. Lucius stared at him. Blake stared back. They both groaned. At the same time, the cupboard creaked in agreement. Chapter 29. A new play, a new day. Blake and Lucius sat in the green room weeks later, looking thoroughly depressed. They were stuck in the Chamberlain's men by order of the Queen, who genuinely thought she was doing them a favour. To them, it felt like a sentence. Shakespeare approached, far too cheerful for their mood. Congratulations on your new roles, gentlemen. They will be perfect for you, he said, smiling like a man who enjoyed their suffering. Thank you, Blake replied with rampant unenthusiasm, knowing full well his role was a cruel joke. At least you aren't a woman, Lucius muttered, equally miserable. You are a perfect woman, Shakespeare said, patting Lucius's shoulder. Lucius glared. He knew he'd been cast as Titania because he'd ruined the last play. Shakespeare left them to speak with another actor. Lucius watched him go, grim. I never thought I would envy an actor playing a character called Bottom. Blake followed his gaze to Shakespeare and the actor playing Bottom. Why did you have to call me a fairy? He moaned. I wish I didn't either, Lucius said. I wish we could leave the Chamberlain's men, Blake said. Me too, Lucius replied. Around them, the rest of the cast buzzed happily with their new roles. Blake and Lucius felt like the only two men condemned to death. The actor playing Bottom finished speaking with Shakespeare, laughing loudly, then wandered over to Blake and Lucius. So, Bottom asked cheerfully, what roles did you get? The king, Blake mumbled, as if he didn't want to admit it. What? Bottom asked. Blake sighed. Oberon, the king of the fairies. Bottom snorted. And you, Lucy? Lucius swallowed. Titania, the queen of the fairies. Bottom chuckled. The roles were made for you. Lucius smiled sweetly. Yours too. Blake's eyes widened. Lucius had just called him an ass. Thank you, Bottom said proudly, completely missing the insult, and walked away. Blake leaned in, whispering, He is an ass. Lucius nodded. And we're the fairies. They both groaned. Chapter 30. And the cycle continues. Days later, Lucius and Blake entered the Globe Theatre, rugged up against the cold night. Their cloaks were for warmth, not fashion. Neither of them cared about appearances anymore. The theatre was silent, the moonlight spilling across the familiar wooden beams. They walked slowly, taking in the view they had seen countless times before, their breath misting in the nippy air. This is one of the Bard's better plays, Lucius remarked, voice echoing faintly in the empty space. Really? I thought all his plays were supposed to be good, Blake said, genuinely puzzled. Lucius snorted. He's like everyone, capable of brilliance sometimes, and capable of brilliant failures at other times. Blake shook his head. I still cannot understand why we're back here again after we killed Romeo and Juliet. Someone saw brilliance where we saw only disaster, I suppose, Lucius said. Blake chuckled. We were a brilliant disaster. It was a pleasure working with you on the last play. Lucius smiled. Let's hope this play is equally chaotic. Blake groaned. I'm not sure I like the casting, though. I am the king of death, not the king of the fairies. At least you're not a woman. Why am I always a woman? Lucius huffed. They reached the rehearsal room door. Blake sighed. Here we go again, Lucy. Lucius rolled his eyes. They stepped inside. Shakespeare beamed at them, far too brightly for the hour, the cold, or their mood. Welcome, gentlemen, he said, clapping his hands. Oberon and Titania, ready for rehearsal? Blake and Lucius exchanged a look, the kind of look shared only by two men who had survived disaster together and were about to walk willingly into another. Lucius muttered, I hate everything. Blake muttered, I'm not wearing wings. Shakespeare ignored both of them. The candles flickered, the cold air settled, the stage waited, and the chaos began again. Don't Call Me Juliet, A Time Traveller's Lament V2. Why do they always cast me as a woman? Why can't I ever play Romeo? I am a serious actor lost out of my time. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy, I'm a man. Call me a woman, and I'll show you I am a man. I am a trained Shakespearean actor in my time. But I hate Shakespeare. He can only see me as a boy, fit only to play a girl. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy. I'm a man. I have nothing against women. I only object to women not playing my parts and leaving them all to me. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy. I'm a man. Oh, why am I always Juliet?
Why do they always cast me as a woman? Why can't I ever play Romeo? I am a serious actor, lost out of my time. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy. I'm a man. Call me a woman and I'll show you I am a man. I am a trained Shakespearean actor in my time, but I hate Shakespeare. He can only see me as a boy, fit only to play a girl. Don't call me Juliet. I'm not Lucy. I'm a man. I have nothing against women. I only object to women not playing my parts and leaving them all to me.